Howdy y'all, I'm Officer Bean from Method's US PvP team, and in this video I'm going to be going over how ferals are, how they're currently performing in the PvP and beta, including their talents, some compositions, and kind of my personal opinions and the pros and cons of the class so far. Just a reminder, this is still beta, so you know some things can change, a little damage, maybe a tiny bit of changes to abilities, but for the most part, a lot of it's going to be pretty accurate. Alright, so let's start with the feral's talents, but first of all, let me give you a general overview. Ferals kind of seem like a pretty much a damage ball. You kind of bleed everything, kind of like an FLS playstyle. Kind of keep brakes on everything, try to get your rips up. They have crazy heals, crazy heal potential, which I'll go over in the talents. And their CC is kind of really cut short with the loss of Clone and Legion. Basically all we have for CC is roots, and they can be decent sometimes, but they can definitely break and not really do much so. Alright, so let's start with their talents. So our first tree includes Predator, Blood Scent, and Lunar Inspiration. Predator, you will never pretty much use. The only use of it is if you're killing a shaman and you're already gonna kill him and he's gonna res. Because pretty much it resets your target's fury if you kill someone. In PvP, if you kill someone, you're probably going to win, right? The second one will be Blood Scent, which is probably the go-to one for a lot of ferals, which I'm using a lot now. It increases your crit chance by 10% if you have a bleed on a target, so rake, rip, anything, which usually if you're attacking a target, you have it up. So pretty much gives you 10% crit overall. And the third one here, Lunar Inspiration, it makes your Moonfire usable in cat form and kind of acts like a bleed. It does pretty good damage, around the same damage, but it really doesn't seem like we can spare the globals that often for it. Maybe it would be good with like kite classes that kite you a lot, so you can kind of keep up a little damage, but it is dispellable and it doesn't seem the best. Alright, so let's start on our second talent tree. We got Renewal, Displacer Beast, and Wild Charge. Renewal, it heals yourself 30% of your maximum health. So it's something I haven't really played with much. It's something that's kind of an awkward thing in that talent tree. I think it'll be used if you're getting trained very hard and you just can't seem to live, you can't find any way out. I haven't had a place to use it yet. Displacer Beast is kind of the same thing as how Restos and Boomkins did in WoD. It teleports you 20 yards and gives you a little speed bonus for a little bit. Not really used for feral unless you're chasing like a Resto Druid or really want to run away, or you know, it's not really that used. But the one that I use all the time is Wild Charge. It's the classic. It's a class, same thing as WoD, everything like that. You can leap to a person, your friendly target, you can leap as a cat to the enemy target, you can jump as a deer, and you can bear root, you know, so all four of those. Right there, I'd probably choose Wild Charge. So now for our third talent tree, which is probably the most unique to Legion, and probably one of the coolest talents choices we have right now. It's called Balance Affinity, Guardian Affinity, and Restoration Affinity. Basically what these do is give you a piece of the pie of each spec, basically. Whichever one you go, you get a piece of the pie. So let's say you go Balance. What Balance is for you, it gives you 5-yard range on all your abilities. So Rake, Rip, Shred, Bash, all those abilities, you get 5+ yards range, so you're still a melee, but you have a little, you know, little lag space right there, you know? It also lets you go into Moonkin and use some Moonkin abilities like Wrath, etc., which don't do crazy damage, but they do decent damage, you know? So it's kind of like a cool, weird kind of thing. Next we have Garni Affinity, which is basically the tank affinity, which helps you kind of tank more damage if people are training you, for example. So it's passive, it reduces the damage you take by 10% damage, and you also learn Mangle, Iron Fur, and Frenzied Regen. Frenzied Regen doesn't work the same as it did in WoD. Basically what Frenzied Regen does is the amount of rage you have, when you use it, it'll consume the rage you have and heal you for how much rage you have, basically. So it kind of works like the same, but it's a little awkward. You get 2 charges of it. You can spam them, so careful of that. You only want to hit one at a time. It does cost a lot, you know, to heal yourself a lot, it'll be a lot of rage. It's hard to kind of get rage though, so it's kind of awkward. The other one is Iron Fur. Iron Fur reduces or increases your armor by 75%. But the problem is it costs a lot of rage, and to get a lot of rage, you would have to be in bear for a decent amount of time, which you probably don't want to do in PvP. So Iron Fur, it seems a bit kind of off. You can try to use it, but sometimes you can't actually use it. But the main thing of there is you take 10% less damage from the passive for going Guardian, so it's good for being trained. And our third one, Resto Affinity, basically makes you a half Resto Druid, and it's really cool. This is my favorite affinity. This is the one I go most of the time. It basically gives you Sarah's Gift, which heals you for 3% of your health every 5 seconds, and then also gives you Rejuvenation, Regrowth, which is pretty cool, and Swiftmend, which is also pretty cool. Regrowth, it heals for a good amount. It leaves the bit, you know, the hot rather, heals you a little bit. Swiftmend, it's like an instant 300-400k heal. It seems really good, 30-second cooldown, and Rejuvenation, like regular Rejuvenation, heals for a bit. It's good to use, you know, if you're getting rotted, put it on all your teammates. This is my favorite affinity because you can kind of become a healer in a sense. It's pretty cool. And our fourth one here, we got Mighty Bash, Mass Entanglement, and Typhoon. This is kind of a pretty obvious talent choice which one you go. Mighty Bash, the same like before, stuns for 5 seconds, is a 50-second cooldown. That's the one I go all the time. Mass Entanglement, just like regular Mass Entanglement, it'll entangle people in front of you and like a conal effect in front of you, you know, but it can be dispelled or broken. It's kind of like a regular root, you know, and they took away Cyclone, so all you have is root now, so you might as well use your procs for root if you're gonna root someone, you know. And then the last one here is Typhoon. Typhoon's pretty cool. It kind of sucks that it's in the same tier as Mighty Bash because you can only pick one of them. I think Typhoon would be okay on some maps, like maybe a Blade's Edge or something to knock someone off. Losing Mighty Bash is kind of a big deal, I think, as a feral, so Mighty Bash here is probably your best option. Alright, and now for our fifth tree. We got Soul of the Forest, Incarnation, the classic, and Savage Roar. Which is kind of weird that Savage Roar is a talent tree, but we'll go over that. So first, Soul of the Forest, I believe it's more of like a PvE kind of talent. It's really good. It grants you 12 energy back per combo point. So let's say you 5-point bite, you get 60 freaking energy back. So it's more energy than you use. But in a PvP scenario, a lot of times, let's say you're fighting wizards, you know, or something that's really playing back and not letting you get your full potential, it's not going to be as good as it would be in PvE, where in PvE you could really take advantage of all that energy, basically. And in PvP, you can't really guarantee that you can have full uptime and all that. Some games, yeah, sure, but it seems like probably the worst in this talent tree. Next we have Incarnation, which is the classic, the lovely, the best. Everyone loves it, right? We all love Incarnation. It's still Incarnation. It still does a fudge load of damage, and it's pretty cool. One thing they nerfed about it though is when you rake an Incarnation, you do not stun the target, okay? So you can't go around starting the whole team again like you're a rogue and pretend to be a rogue. But you know, the stun, basically what it does is if you want to stun, you need to use your stealth to re-stealth and then hit rake to stun. So the max you can stun an Incarn is 3 times with rake, which might put some people off. The damage it deals is still pretty insane. It replaces your Berserk, so it kind of combines the two, so you can't Berserk an Incarn later. It just happens when you press Incarn. It does a lot of damage. It's definitely good for like cleaves, like Kitty Cleave, for example. You'll see some videos. Kitty Cleave, any kind of cleave, Ebola cleave, anything like that. And then you have Savage Roar, which is your last one, which I think is probably, for the most part, the best. If you're not running a crazy cleave like Kitty Cleave, Ebola, you know, stuff like Jungle Cleave, you know, stuff like that. If you're not running a really heavy cleave, then I think Savage Roar is actually probably the best here. Savage Roar, they kind of nerfed it. 5 combo points, you get 25 seconds of Savage Roar. So it's kind of hard on the timing. You got to get used to it, other than like in WoD where you had like a 50-second Savage Roar and it just reapplies when you rake. You have to actually use your combo points and get a 25-second Savage Roar. It increases your damage done by 25%, which is a fair bit. This is good for like longer games, like let's say you're playing with like a mage, or even like with a warlock, or some class that's not going to one-shot people right away. It definitely gives you the constant damage to make you do a lot of damage. So I would go Savage Roar and Incarnation, depending on what you play, or what you want to play, or what your playstyle is, really. Alright, now for our 6th talent here. We got Sabretooth, Jagged Wounds, and Loons Grace. All these are new to Legion, and they're all really cool in their own sense. So Sabretooth, basically, what it does is lets you refresh your rip on any target with a Ferocious Bite. Doesn't matter if it's a 1-point Ferocious Bite, 2-point Ferocious Bite, 9-point Ferocious Bite. It doesn't matter what kind of Ferocious Bite. It will refresh your rip, and the rip will keep the damage it had, okay? So let's say you Tiger Fury your rip, it will keep that Tiger Fury damage if you do a 1 combo point Ferocious Bite on it. It'll stay really strong, your rip will. This talent I don't really choose a lot. It's kind of like the odd man out. You'll see in a second. Next, we have Jagged Wounds. Jagged Wounds basically makes your bleeds tick 33% faster. So basically it's more damage faster, but shorter bleeds. So it does more damage. It pairs really, really well with Incarnation, especially if you're running that cleave or bursty kind of composition. It pairs really well to do that single target big damage. So that'd be like your single target burst cleavey spec. And then we have a Loons Grace, which is a really cool talent, and what it does is it gives you instantly 5 combo points, and then 1 combo point a second after that for 5 seconds, basically. So basically in total it gives you 10 combo points, and it's really cool paired up with Savage Roar, actually, since you can be in stealth and you can use it in stealth. So before you open on someone, for example, you could a Loons Grace to get 5 points, get a Savage Roar up, 5-point Savage Roar, and you could open, and the points that you get after you use a Loons Grace, like the 1 point every second, basically when you open you'll almost have 5 combo points, base, so you can put a rip up right then and there, you know, and that's all with Savage Roar. So it's a pretty cool talent mixed with Savage Roar. You know, there's still more stuff you can do to it. This is kind of early beta, so this is what I found so far. It's pretty cool though. Now for our last talent. It's Brutal Slash, Blood Talons, a Moment of Clarity. Brutal Slash seems to be paired up with like an Incarn kind of playstyle, a Kitty Cleave kind of playstyle still. Basically, it replaces your swipe and makes it hit really hard and have 3 charges that only cost 20 energy. Each charge hits for around 300k on the tooltip. So, you know, if someone uses defensives, it'll obviously be less. And you have 3 charges of them that only cost 20 energy. So you can do a heavy amount of burst with it. If you're looking to end the game within a minute or something, you know, you can really use that to your advantage. Next, we have Blood Talons, which is kind of like an awkward PvE kind of spec still. It's the same as in WoD. When you use a Healing Touch, your next 2 cat form abilities will do more damage. 40% more damage to be exact. So basically, if you were to Healing Touch, you have 5 combo points, and you Tiger Tree Rip, that rip is going to rip their butt. You know what I mean? It's going to be a lot of damage. Stuff like that is really hard to pull off all the time perfectly in a PvP scenario. It's basically impossible because you never know if you're going to get kidneyed or stunned or feared, or, you know, something's going to happen to you. It's not going to be perfect all the time. You know, it's kind of the same as Soul of the Forest. You know, it's really good, but you can't guarantee it. The last one here, which I use all the time almost, I love this talent. It's called Moment of Clarity. Now, Moment of Clarity, if you know what Omen of Clarity is, basically it makes you randomly have a chance to get a proc that reduces the next cast of your, you know, like a shred that costs 40 energy, reduces it to 0, makes it free, basically. So this gives you 3 charges of it when it procs, so 3 free abilities, and it also increases your maximum energy by 30%, which is pretty freaking radical. I really like this sound because it gives you enough uptime. It just, you do good damage with it, and you can, when the Omen of Clarity actually procs, you can actually use it on like Thrash, you know, to get a free another bleed up there, you know, especially if they're stacked up. It's really good. So now we have something completely new to Legion here, what they added in, which is pretty cool. It's called Honor Talents. So these talents only work in PvP combat, in arena, BGs, duels, that kind of stuff. They don't work out in the random world. You have Trinket, Adaptation, and Relentlessness for your first tier. Now, Trinket is regular Trinket. You can Trinket a Polymorph. It's a 2-minute cooldown, just regular as it always has been. Adaptation's kind of unique. It's kind of weird. Basically, when it goes off, it's a 60-second cooldown, and what it does is it automatically trinkets a full CC, but with a 60-second cooldown. It's shorter than Trinket and could potentially be used in some situations. I haven't really used it yet much, to be honest, because it just kind of feels a little bit weird to the other two. I mean, the last one here is Relentlessness. And Relentlessness is really freaking cool. It reduces your incoming crowd control by 25%. It can actually be pretty crazy if you think about it. Like, let's say there's an Orc Shaman, right? And this Orc Shaman's fighting a Rogue. And Orcs already take reduced stun, you know, time. With Relentlessness, like a kidney shot would be like 3 seconds, for example. If you're an Orc Shaman and have Relentlessness, it's pretty freaking wild. But yeah, it just reduces the CC by 25%. So, you know, your full polymorph would be reduced to like a 6-second poly kind of thing, you know? So it's kind of a cool talent choice. All right, now for our second tier. And basically the first and second tier of these honor talents, pretty much everyone has them similar. Like every melee has these similar and every caster has theirs similar. The first 2 ones here. Basically the first one here is Hardiness, which when you're above 80% health, you take 20% less damage. So it's pretty cool, like, versus, like, let's say, now there's Glacial Spike, but let's say, for example, Chaos Bolt and WoD, if you knew it was going to one-shot you and you were at 80%, you would take 20% less damage. So that would be kind of cool, but it's one of the least used ones, I think, in these. Next, you have Reinforced Armor, which is kind of like a basic kind of, if you're fighting, like, a wizard or, you know, just, like, kind of like a rot composition, it just gives you 10% health. So it's just overall kind of decent. And our last one here is just for like heavy melee, for like warriors, demon hunters a bit, you know, any melee that their physical melee attacks, like let's say they have a 2-hander, do a lot of damage, you know? So what sparring does, it's called sparring. What sparring does is physical melee attacks have a 20% chance to be blunted, dealing 50% less damage. So you have a 20% chance to like cut their damage in half, their melee swing in half. So that's a pretty cool one for melee. Alright, now we get to the unique ones for Feral. We got Protector of the Grove, Shape Mender, and Leader of the Pack. Now, these can be really cool, especially as Protector of the Grove. So what Protector of the Grove does is when you cast a healing touch on your friendly, like on your partner, it basically reduces the cast time of healing touch by a lot. So you have 1 second healing touches after you cast one, and you get instant procs, you know, so you can use an instant proc, and then you can spam cast a 1 second healing touch that heals for around 300k, which is really freaking valuable. Like, let's say you're fighting a cleave, and they're training your healer, you can keep that healer alive basically if they don't stop you. So it's a really cool talent, but the only downfall of it is when you're healing, you don't do any damage. So it's kind of like an awkward, you have to find like a middle ground between it if you're going to use that talent. And you got to know when you need to heal and know when you need to do damage. So that's pretty cool. Next we have Shape Mender, which is just like regular Shape Mender. It heals 5% of your health anytime you like shift to bear, cat, you know, anything like that. It heals 5% of your health, but it can only happen every 5 seconds. I think this one's probably the worst in this tier for ferals, just in general. And then we have Leader of the Pack, and this talent right here I think is pretty good versus locks. Basically when you shred, it makes your shred heal for about 30k, sometimes 40k. It's a pretty cool thing, you know, within allies within 10 yards you get healed for like 30-40k every time you shred. So if you're shredding a lot, everyone's stacked up, you're fighting like a warlock team that's running your whole team, that's your go-to talent right there. It's gonna heal most of your team if they're around you, especially if you're running a cleave or something where your teammates are going to be on you, especially if you're running Incarn too, where you're just shredding for a while, you know, it does heal for a good amount. Like I said, Protective of the Grove for something that's going to train something else that you need to help keep up, and Leader of the Pack for more like a kind of a rot situation. Alright, our fourth talent tree, our honor talent tree rather, is Pouncing Strikes, Freedom of the Herd, and Primal Vitality. Basically, Pouncing Strikes is really cool. It's kind of like a wild charge built into your rake. It lets your rake pounce to the person if they're within 10 yards. So it kind of helps from being kited, and you can use it in really cool ways, really. So it kind of helps you move around more. And I was even debating maybe you really don't need wild charge sometimes. So, you know, who knows? It's basically like a mini wild charge. It's really cool. Next we have Freedom of the Herd, which basically makes your Stampeding Roar like it worked in WoD. Basically it frees everyone from roots, frees them from slows. Like right now it doesn't free you from slows or roots. It's just like a speed bonus if you're not slowed. But it'll make everyone free from roots and all that. I don't know if that's going to be used much. Maybe it will be for very certain things, but it doesn't seem like it'd be way too overused. And Primal Vitality is kind of like another talent that probably won't be used too much. Basically, when you enter Stealth or Prowl, you get a free healing touch. You can't really enter stealth too much outside of Incarn, and with Incarn you can only enter stealth 3 times maximum if you do it perfectly in Incarn. So it's only probably going to be used if you're versing a super heavy melee cleave where you just need the heals. Like, you need the heals, and if other than that, I would most likely choose Pouncing Strikes over everything almost all the time. Alright, and our fifth one here, we got King of the Jungle, Blood Trauma, and Fury Swipes. Now, a couple of these are kind of interesting. Now, King of the Jungle, every rip you have on a target gives you 4% damage and speed. So, and it can stack up to a max of 3 times. So in a 3s game, if you have a rip on all 3 targets and are constantly refreshing a rip on a target, it'll constantly stay stacked basically, but you just need to get the 3 stacks in general first. Basically, it'll stack up to 12 damage and 12% speed. So in general, it seems like the best talent in this tree. I'll go over the other ones in a second, but it basically gives you damage and movement speed, which both are great for PvP. Now we have Blood Trauma. Blood Trauma is a really unique, kind of weird ability. I really haven't played with it too much because I really don't see the benefit of playing this in a lot of comps. Like maybe very specific comps this might be better, as in like maybe a kitty cleave or something like that. Basically, it makes your maim, for some reason, increases the damage it does, but it makes it an in-cap. To me, that's kind of weird. It increases the damage, but if you hit it again, it's gonna break. So what's the point of increasing the damage? Don't ask me, ask Blizzard, I don't know. So it's kind of cool. Basically it makes it like a gouge that randomly does damage. I really don't see much use for it. It seems really awkward because stuns seem very valuable in Legion because there's not a lot of CC, so it seems kind of awkward. And then we have Fury Swipes, which casting Thrash will remove the energy cost by your next swipe. This also seems very awkward for PvP. I guess it's something for Brutal Slash, or I'm not really sure in what situation you'd be swiping a lot, you know? It just kind of seems a little bit off. So like I said, King of the Jungle in this tier is probably your best go-to, unless you're playing something really kinky. Alright, and finally we're on our last honor talent tier, which is Savage Momentum, Fresh Wound, and Rip and Tear. Savage Momentum, basically like your two-piece in WoD. When you kick someone, your Tiger Shredder will reset, so it's very good versus casters, wizards, you know, or if you know you're going to kick a healer, if the healer has a cast, like a Holy Priest or something, if you know you can kick them a lot, it seems very good to get your Tiger Shredder back off cooldown. I love this talent. I've loved the two-piece and WoD too. It's great. I freaking love it. That's my go-to almost a lot of the time, unless I'm fighting like a cleave or something. If I'm fighting at least one wizard or something, usually I'll go that. Next is Fresh Wound. I don't know, you know, same as Blood Trauma, like, I don't know if I'm being trolled or something, but basically it makes your rake basically crit. Your initial rake crit. Not the whole dot through, but your initial rake. If a target has no rake on it and you rake it, the rake itself will crit. Now, it's kind of troll because it's just, if you don't have a rake on it, it crits only, and if you do, it's no point. And a lot of the times, you're not going to let your rake fall off completely. You'll refresh it with like 1 second left, or, you know, you want to keep that uptime of it. So you don't really want to cut it to the wire, especially in PvP. So this talent, it seems kind of awkward. I would recommend staying clear of that. And next we have Rip and Tear, which is a really freaking cool talent too. Now, like, let's say there was no wizards to kick and stuff, I would 100% go Rip and Tear. Basically, it instantly puts up a rake and rip, 5-point rip, of course. And you don't have to have 5 points. You know, it just puts it up there, and it is a 5 combo point one, and that's pretty cool. You know, it takes some bit of getting used to, but I'd either go Savage Momentum or Rip and Tear here, really, depending on what you're fighting. Alright, so now that we're done with the talents, let's go over the pros and cons really quickly. Ferals so far, how I feel like them in Legion. Ferals seem really good with spread pressure, keeping up bleeds on everyone. Like I said before, it's going to be like an FLS kind of playstyle. I think a lot of Ferals will kind of be in the FLS playstyle, where you kind of keep your rake and try to keep rips up, basically. Unless you're doing, you know, like a nice kitty cleave or something, where you're going to go Incarnation, just hit the guy until he dies, you know? So basically, I think they're really good for spread pressure. I also think their heals can be freaking crazy. Like, if you really use your heals right, especially the Grove talent where you can just spam your healing touches, I think that can be crazy. It's just a little awkward because you have to balance it with damage. You really have to kind of get used to it and used to the comps you're fighting when you're going to need to heal. And all that, and you know, the survivability it's a little bit better than WoD because they made our walls last 3 seconds longer, so walls last 9 seconds now, which is pretty cool. But the problem with Feral, here's some cons: you're still gonna die in stuns. You're still gonna die to, you know, like the rogue mage kind of thing. You're still gonna die the same way as you did in WoD. Our self-sustain is actually really bad. For example, we can heal our partners a lot, but healing ourselves is actually really hard. Like, when we heal ourselves, we don't get any bonus, like from the Grove talent. Like, our healing touches don't get faster when we heal ourselves. So you can kind of do some things where you actually heal your teammate just to heal yourself more, you know? So you have the faster cast for 5 seconds, you know? So it's something you need to maybe get used to, but it doesn't seem like our self-sustain is actually that great. So, you know, we can rot a lot harder, and, you know, it seems like we can help our partners more than we can help ourselves, really. And, you know, it kind of sucks that Cyclone was removed. That was one of my favorite abilities. If you guys know me from my Twitch or whatever, you know my sub sound, you know, and all that. You know, I love cloning. I was known for cloning. I love it, and it's freaking awful that they took it away. I really dislike that. So basically all we have for CC now is really like roots and stuns, and the stuns you have to use really wisely because you don't have too many of them. You basically have maim and bash, you know, so they really gutted our CC. That's another con of Feral, is we really can't really CC. We just damage and heal. Alright, now that we're done with pros and cons, we can go into the potential compositions you can maybe play as a Feral coming up. Like I said, this is beta still, so, and we haven't been able to queue rated, only skirmishes and war games, so this isn't the absolute, you know, best point of view here, but some comps I think will be good will be FLS, Feral Lock Shaman. It's more like a rot playstyle. It seems like Ferals are going to be bleeding a lot of targets and kind of causing spread damage, spread pressure a lot. So FLS I think is definitely going to be a potential comp. Kitty Cleave, Ebola, all these cleaves seem like they're still probably going to be pretty good with Incarnation and stuff. I think with the fast-paced game right now, Legion's a bit faster pace, obviously, than WoD. So I think with the fast-paced gameplay, at least in the first seasons or so, I think Incarn's going to be really strong with some cleaves, like Kitty Cleave and stuff. And other than that, you know, it's kind of maybe some little mage in there, maybe a little mage action, mage feral or something. You know, ferals don't have the clones anymore, but maybe you can make something work. You know, I'm just hoping for the best here, that maybe something with a mage or a shadow priest. Well, shadow priests are really good right now, so I'm sure feral shadow priest will be good, but ferals really do get outshined by classes like rogues a lot right now. Basically, it's kind of like, why would you want a feral over a rogue in a comp like FMP? You know, you'd rather have the rogue mage over the feral mage, really. So mainly I would look for rock comps like FLS and kind of cleaves. Basically, guys, my final thoughts on ferals is I feel like they're okay right now. I think they're really awkward with the loss of clone and the fact that you don't do a lot of healing when you're doing damage, and you don't do the most damage, so you do okay damage, and you do a lot of healing, but when you're healing, you're not doing damage. So it's kind of like an awkward thing where I need time and experience, I guess, to figure out the real script. So when the game actually launches and there's rated arenas out there, it'll really help people kind of learn the meta and learn the quote-unquote script, and we'll see how they kind of fit in when the game actually comes out. Like I said, this is beta, so you know, maybe by God's gift they'll add clone back, who knows. Anyway, if you guys want to ask something and give feedback or anything about the video, you can leave a comment. You know, make sure to like it if you guys enjoyed. It's kind of feral overview. I know it was a bit long, but if you want to see more of me, you can catch me at twitch.tv/Beanslayerx. And yeah, you can ask me any questions you want. Just leave anything down below, guys. I hope you guys have a good day, and this is Officer Bean out.